now the sliding head message is out there. People have now realised it is only a CNC lathe, which is no different than a fixed head lathe, just a difference in how we move the material around. So they've now embraced the technology and said this can benefit our company.
Welcome to today's MTD podcast. I'm Paul Jones, the founder and managing director of MTD CNC, and today I have the privilege of being at Star GB in Derby at their headquarters, and I'm going to be talking to Steve Totty today. Now, Steve is currently the managing director of the company. He's been at Star for 20 years now, would you believe? And that's really principally the reason that I've come here to visit today, to talk to Steve about how business has changed in the last 2 decades and how things at Star have evolved and the technologies that they can now offer. So, Steve, welcome to MTD's podcast. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Paul.
Now let's pick up with this 20 years, this 2 decades, because this fascinates me. I've known you probably for over, or probably half that, or maybe just over half that. You started as engineering manager, then you went to operations manager, and of course now managing director, and you have been for almost 6 years. Big differences between those 3 occupations?
Just a bit.
So let's start with the engineering manager one. When you started, Steve, what was life like here then at Star?
A lot quieter. Very different when I think about it, really. You know, in those days, we as a business were maybe selling 25, 30 machines a year. A lot of the machines were machine, bar feeder, swerve conveyor, deliver, install, commission, and that was it. Nowadays, that would be a luxury to get something like that.
Now, when you started that job, what was your previous history then? Did you come from a machine shop or from that area?
Yeah, I was a bit of a nomad. Worked for numerous companies, setting cam sliding heads. That was my trade. I served my apprenticeship at Stanley Tools a long time ago, and then worked different parts of the country, setting cam machines from Petermans, Becklers, Stroms, all sorts, and then CNCs, Tornos machines, in fact.
So then you moved into this engineering. You probably were a perfect fit then, really, weren't you? Engineering manager for a company like Star, hand in glove.
Maybe to a degree. For myself, the first few weeks of being here, I was thinking, what have I done this for? I was used to, actively being involved, setting machines, seeing something every day of what I'd done. And suddenly working in an office was a bit of a culture shock.
Now, this is when the company would have been based in Melbourne in Derbyshire.
Correct.
Wasn't it? Yeah. And the size of the business then was a lot different to what it is now. And like you've correctly identified already, the volume of machines sold then was a lot different to now. Then you went into operations. So what was the difference between engineering manager and operations, Steve?
Well, the difference was you've missed the job out. I was the service manager as well. I went from applications to eventually service manager, which again was another big shift. But the good part, the easy part of that to a degree was I knew the people I was speaking to because I'd spoke to them invariably over, applications issues. So suddenly it was the service side, which wasn't my strength, but I knew the people and I knew a lot of the answers. And if I didn't, I knew the people I could get the answers from. So that was quite one of the more enjoyable times during my 20 years because it was never a dull moment.
Well, that pieces the puzzle together quite well then, in a sense, really, because engineering manager, service manager, operations manager, into managing director means you
again. I was general manager after operations manager. We like titles.
Yeah. But all of those roles then perfectly positioned you then to become the managing director, which would have been no easy task taking over from Mr. Bob Hunt, who we all know well.
Yes.
That's a bit like, in some ways, the next Sheffield United manager, isn't it? Having to take on that responsibility after such a success.
Well, nobody can outdo what Sheffield United have done, as you know full well, as a fan of a side that we've taken 4 points off this year.
And had the pleasure of being with you at one of those events as well. But on a serious note, Bob's reputation here at Star, he did some fantastic things for this business.
Bob took me and several people on who are still here now. We've got, Chaz Bilku 17 years, Stuart Pirrie 13 years, Phil Bellamy probably 16 years, all those people were taken on in Bob's tenure. He had the vision, and I said when we did the official opening here and the also the 20-year anniversary, I said I was just really picking up on the foundations that Bob had laid. It was a relatively easy transition for me because you don't change it's not broken. You don't have to fix anything. It was just a case of moving things different directions, more on the moving more electronic than paper based, because Bob was from an era where files and everything were done on paper. Now we're more electronic, but the infrastructure that Bob put in taking myself and a lot of the people on to build on the service and support was his vision of where Star needed to be, or A&S Precision, and I've just carried on with that.
And he was very successful in where he steered the business, wasn't he? And like you say, responsible in a big way for some of the growth over the past 2 decades. But what can't be forgotten in amongst that is the product portfolio that has been part of that success. How much has that evolved in the 2 decades that you've been here, Steve?
Oh, hugely. When I started, we were still selling machines that didn't have a subspindle, and people would buy a machine without a subspindle, machines without driven tools. Now we don't offer, our most basic machine is power tools on the front, power tools on the bike, subspindle, C-axis main, C-axis sub, probably 7 axes as a minimum, up to sort of 13, whereas back in those days you could get a sort of 3-4 axis machine.
And why have Star come along this journey to produce these machines? When you look at them, turning, predominantly previously turning, threading, boring, reaming, all of those elements, but now we're talking about milling, contouring, profiling. All of those things have really been brought about in order to make your offering more universal, haven't they, on sliding head lathes? Open up new audiences for you.
I think, to be truthful, Paul, though, a lot of that has been customer-driven. Customers looking at the concepts of sliding heads, and we understand why they are quicker than a fixed head because of the sort of layout of the machines. And then people are running fixed heads of saying, why can't we do this on a sliding head? If it fits under the for us 42 millimeter diameter, for others 35, 36, there's other people, Citizen Tornos making sliding heads who are all doing the same. If you've got the right part and it's under that size, then you can make it on a sliding head because of the driven tool capability, all these other things that back in the day weren't available. You made them on a fixed head, put them on a VMC nowadays, and I think that's been mainly driven by customer demand for this, and ourselves and say other sliding head manufacturers picking up on that and embracing that and moving with the technology to make it happen.
And do you still go into machine shops these days and still see them doing what you've just mentioned in a more antiquated way, as would have been done 20 years ago? Is the curve? Are people changing the way they do things now, or is there still a lot of businesses stuck in their old habits and old ways that could be doing things a lot better, that frustrate you sometimes, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, definitely now the sliding head message is out there more. The fear, this black art, which the cam side of it was a bit of a black art, but people have now realised it is only a CNC lathe, which is no different than a fixed head lathe, just a difference in how we move the material around. So that those sort of boundaries have been broken down, and companies going back 20 years, we sold to sliding head customers. There was X amount of sliding head customers, big companies who just bought and ran sliding heads, and other manufacturing facilities steered clear because of the fear. Nowadays, we're selling to companies who do fabrication, we're selling to companies who do welding, we're selling to companies who are predominantly fixed head or VMC driven, because they've now embraced the technology and said, this can benefit our company. And
quite poignantly, that takes me on to my next point. Do you think that software is responsible for a lot of that? Because we've talked about the hardware, the capabilities of the machine and the operations it can do, but some of those barriers to entry and those fears have been erased, in my opinion, by the software. How easy the controls are to use, some of the software you offer, NC Assist and things like that, just make that learning curve a little bit more simple.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, I don't think the full CAD CAM packages, there's some people do that, but yes, I think there's been a lot of systems put in place by us and say other sliding head manufacturers who've overlooked it and said, let's try and make this as simplistic as we can. To get rid of the fear, because if you're from a fixed head background, you look at a sliding head, there seems to be a lot going on. There isn't a great deal if you break it down to 1, 2 tools in cut, maybe 3. But if you break it right down, it's not anywhere near as complicated as it looks. And I think you're right then with NC Assist and various template-driven software systems we've done, it takes the nervousness out from customers. And that's why we do all our training on that sort of template-based thing. So it gives the customers a good starting point.
And one of the other areas is the size of the parts that can now be manufactured on these machines. And I believe this is another reason why the audience has become much wider. Sort of 42 over 40 mil bar diameters now possible. Is this as big as it can get, or do you think it can go bigger?
I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of it is then, a 3 metre bar being driven or 4 metre bar being driven over that length, held and supported at the very front just by a guide bush. So I think you've got to look at sort of power and torque, et cetera, vibration on the bar. So if you're getting bigger, there may be an issue with there. There are a couple of manufacturers who will go up to 45 millimetres already, but I personally think 42 is about the maximum we should be at.
And with the introduction of bigger bar diameters, you've also got machines now, like for example the ST38 that's got 3 turrets on it. So that's then lending itself again. It's broadening where the machines fit, isn't it? This is a perfect illustration of Star looking at the market, seeing what customers are doing, and thinking whether they can develop a machine that will satisfy those other areas.
Yeah, it'd be ideal if we could have different machines in a portfolio, but we don't. We are a sliding head manufacturer. Yes, we have been developing a fixed head stock machine in Japan, but as a sliding head manufacturer, we've stuck to our sort of core principles, and yes, gone up in size, because there's a lot of fixed head machines that are running sub 42 millimeters. So now you can put that on a sliding head just by the layout of the machine. It will be quicker. A platen will always be quicker than a turret. Just chip to chip time will, and therefore sliding heads with a platen and or a turret, and as we do the SV, which has one of each, gives you the flexibility and the speed, which I think more and more fixed head stock users are looking at that and saying that's the way to maximise investment and make more money.
And Star as an organisation being, as you've said yourself, mainly or are turning that, okay, they might be looking at a fixed head machine as well now, is the fact that they've really focused on their core values. What they do has meant that they are, not just a jack of all trades here, they are a master of the one that they do. Some machine tool businesses might try and develop new machines in all these different areas, grinding, turning, milling, 3D printing as well, all of these, and maybe take their eye off the ball on the one core area that they've made a success from. Do you think that part of the reason of Star's success is the fact that they have come from this turning background? They've really focused on that. Yeah, you say they might have a fixed head machine as well now, but they've not diversified and started to introduce different machines of different disciplines and become almost like a jack of all trades and take their eye off the ball on the turning. They're very much focused on what they do, and that's probably one of the reasons that they are as successful as they are.
No, I'd agree. That would be, to me, our strongest point, that everybody here knows and understands sliding heads, nothing else. You don't ring up and get a guy who's great on VMCs but doesn't really know much about the sliding heads. So from a engineering point of view, from the company, which has always been my bias, is great, because we can become the masters of that. From a sales point of view, it'd be nice to have different machines in a portfolio, but I would prefer to stick at one product, knowing that we're going to be the best we can with that sort of technology.
And you say you are an engineering company that supplies or sells machines, which is quite the reverse of maybe some other businesses, isn't it? How important is it for you as the managing director for that to be known to the UK market?
For me, I think it's critical. It's probably not the done thing, but we're tasked nowadays, with solving problems. We don't get orders for a machine and a bar feeder that we deliver. We get 10-part turnkey. We get given parts that are going to test the best of our application engineers to even see, can it be done on the machine, and that for me is going to be our strength going forward. And as far as I'm concerned, whenever I'm in charge, we'll carry on going down that route.
And that must be, again, partially responsible for the way the company continues to grow, because engineers, machining businesses out there do look upon the skills and the expertise of guys like yourself. So I would credit you with the fact here that one of the reasons you've maintained that position as a number one in the sales of sliding head lathes is not just the product, but it's testament to what you do here and what you can see here. I mean, how much, Steve, how many of the sales of machines do involve a turnkey now, would you say, as a percentage?
Difficult to say. Probably 35% of all machines that go in would require either a turnkey or some acceptance trials. But even on the ones that technically aren't, we're down there when we're installing the machines. A part of the training, we're training around specific components for them. It might not be bought as a turnkey, but there'll be established users who know our product and they want some help in maybe doing some features on a machine that they don't normally do. So they're learning on the job, but they don't need it specifically for a component.
And how do you grow this business a bit more now going forward? I mean, what do you say to your sales guys in a sales meeting? Come on, guys, there is more opportunities out there. These machines are far more capable now. Have you thought about this industry, that industry? Is there anything that you sort of, without giving away all your secrets, kind of see the pattern
my
of the
sales
future?
guys would love to think that's how the sales meetings run here. But unfortunately, I think you know me better than that. So. No, we have got more opportunities. We have got a great resource in the fact that we've got a showroom, which we didn't have when we were at the old building. We do a lot more marketing. We the doors are sort of getting open for more and more people. And all we were trying to say with our sales guys is, when you're talking to people, get them to come here, let them come and see what we can do. We've always got machines on demo. We've got parts, display parts, and it's really getting people to look, get rid of the blinkers of sliding head, high volume, simple parts to, prismatic, what we can do. We've got guys making one-offs, we've got companies, we've got a customer called Prototype Productions. By definition, that's what they do. So it's sort of breaking down them barriers, and from a sales point of view, it's really trying to get into some of these other companies and let them realise the benefits of sliding heads. To me, that's the way we'll grow. We can't just keep selling to the same people.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot you do get a lot of new users year on year, because we visit a lot of them, and doing some quite magical components as well in different parts. People talk about automation all the time as well now in this industry, but isn't this something that you've been practicing for a long time when you look at sliding heads?
Well, I suppose just by having a bar feed on a machine automates it. From a fixed dead stock background, when certain people have got just loading a billet, taking it out, you've got a man on a machine. When we sell in the first slider to any customer, we're trying to say this: the issue you'll have is you can't have a man on that machine because there'll be nothing for him to do. And which is good, because then people, and again, this goes for us and our competitors, they tend to sell another machine within 18 months and then another, because that's how you're going to make money. Having one man working on a sliding head is not the way forward, because rest assured your competitors will have more than one machine and one guy split between 3 or 4, which is a sensible way of doing it.
And then on the service, this is a huge area, isn't it? I mean, you would always say, and I believe I'd be right in saying that the salesman might sell the first machine, the service will sell the second.
I think that's the same across the board. I think in any walk of life, if what you buy does as it's meant to do and is supported and looked after, you can do this with buying who you buy your electricity from or anything. If you get looked after and get a good service, then you'll come back. And yes, as far as I'm concerned, definitely in our industry, service and support is paramount. We're all customers in his own right in various things in life, and we all want to be treated well. We want communication. We want to know when something's happening. Machines break down, of course they do. All our machines will break down at some point. It's how you deal with that. And we refuse to have automated phone systems. We want people to be able to pick up. Every member of staff here has a business card with their mobile on. We're there to be contacted. To me, that's how you get judged as a business, not on I sold that machine and we made X amount of money. It's
what you do. Yeah, it's what you do as that engineering company that you've said. We started this podcast, Steve, by talking about where the machines kind of started, the more simple type of machine solution. We're now looking at machines here from Star that are have the ability to have B-axis on them, turrets, twin spindlers, and more features. Where does it go next? What else can they add to these machines that will take the business to the next level and open more doors?
I'm not sure, to be brutally honest. Every time a new machine comes out and you think that's quicker than the last one, how? But then I suppose that's technology, processing speed, motors, power, etc. Again, I think it will come down to market demands and Star and say Citizen, Tornos, Sagami, all these other people looking at the marketplace and seeing what else we can do within that envelope. We've had lasers on machines. There's we're doing a project at the moment where we're going to have to put a robot inside the machine to load a blank and then put it into and then the subspindle will pick it up and machine it. It's really going to be driven by demands from customers.
It may be more down to software than, you take the HFT that you have on your machines and other things that you've introduced that enable you to cut parts quicker, maybe do parts that you couldn't have done before because you had to intervene and it wasn't as cost effective to do it. So there could be some quicker wins in those areas.
Yeah, I think a lot of machine tool companies, the control is the control, but it's a bit like a PC. We touch a little bit of that control of what the power of the controls can do. And we've got, as you've seen before, when we did the cell with Fanuc, where we're picking a part up, we're then cleaning it, gauging it, feeding that data back in time, altering offsets. So if it's moved 2 microns, the machine will automatically adjust itself. So, jobs before which would require a lot of people and grinding operations because of tolerances and then making them a process, now suddenly can be a process because the machine capability on the software side can handle it.
20 years, when does a watch come? Is it 25, 30 or... And what watch would
I'd
it
have
be?
to learn to tell the time first, I'd imagine.
Well, if I can't get you on that one, then what about this one? Where's Sheffield United going to end up this year in the league, do you think? And I'll hold you to this when the season comes to a close.
We won't get relegated.
Right. Above Arsenal or just below, do you think?
Because you haven't edited this, I will say below Arsenal because you'll edit it and say I said above Arsenal. So,
on that note, thank you very much.
Or maybe on the same. We maybe go for the same points. Probably,
maybe, and we'll win on goal difference. Steve, it's been a pleasure being here today. It is a fascinating journey you've been on over the last 20 years. It's been great to know you and see the business grow so much, certainly in the last decade. Thank you very much, Steve, for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the MTD Podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.